Hey friends, welcome back to the CyberSnap channel. And for those of you who are just landing here for the first time, welcome. Thank you for being here. This is just kind of a pretty casual show where I like to blab about magic cards for extended periods of time. You might be able to tell that from the sound of my voice that I am getting over a cold this evening and was debating whether or not I wanted to make this video, but I just need to talk about this magic card with y'all. So we're gonna probably try and keep it short, but you know how that goes when we try to keep things short around here. So yeah, the idea of this video is that I have one magic card that I think is being pretty severely underplayed in the Commander format. And if this slide behind my head gives you any idea, it is, in fact, an Eldrazi Titan. And you may think, an Eldrazi Titan? What kind of Eldrazi Titan is underplayed in the Commander format? Well, most of them are not. And this one even still sees a lot of play, but today I want to talk with you all about Kozilek, the Broken Reality. I think right now, out of all the Eldrazi Titans, this is one of the cheapest Titans that you can pick up. It's about $6 or $7 online, and so that's some indication of the fact that it's not seeing a whole lot of play right now. It is seeing some play in some decks that are either Eldrazi tribal decks or decks that are colorless and have a limited supply of big creatures to select from. And then it's also seeing play in some morph and manifest and disguise and turn things upside down strategies. But I guess before we go any further, let's actually read what this guy does, and we can sort of explain why I think that it deserves to see play outside of those decks as well. So this is 9 mana. It's a lot of mana to play Kozilek, but it's a lot of mana to play any Eldrazi Titan. It's a 9 mana 9/9, and then when you cast this spell, up to 2 target players each manifest 2 cards from their hands. For each card manifested this way, you draw a card. And then for those of you unfamiliar with manifest, to manifest a card, put it onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and then turn it face up anytime for its mana cost if it's a creature card. And then the last line of text here is, other colorless creatures you control get +3/+2, which is such a strange, uneven buff, which I just think is pretty fantastic flavor for a weird, kind of off-the-wall Eldrazi card with strange abilities here. But now that I've read it for you, let's talk a little bit about it. The first time that I read this card, I was pretty unimpressed with it myself. I have a Kozilek the Great Distortion commander deck. That was actually one of the first commander decks I've ever built. Way back in, gosh, maybe that was like 2016 or something like that. And it is one that I still play to this day. And I love Kozilek as a character. I love Kozilek as a card. I think the original Kozilek, Butcher of Truth, is very strong. I think Kozilek the Great Distortion is very strong. But when I first saw this card, I was a little disappointed. And I think that maybe that was sort of the consensus of a lot of people. And so kind of what I'm trying to do now is kind of break down what you're actually getting with this card. And if you'll take a look at all of these other magic cards that I framed around Kozilek here, really what you're getting when you cast this is all of these. And in the case of Fire Elemental, you're actually getting 2 of them. Okay, so when you cast Kozilek, you have a lot of flexibility of which players are going to manifest 2 cards from their hands. You could just have 2 opponents manifest 2 cards from their hands face down and make them into 2/2 creatures. If you do that, you're going to draw a card for each card manifested this way. You get to draw 4 cards, just like regular Kozilek. Butcher of Truth, that is. But I think most of the time what you're going to do when you play this card is you are going to cast it and you're going to target yourself, and then you're going to target an opponent who has just a couple of cards in their hand. You're going to look for a player that has 2 or 3 cards in hand, and the reason why you're going to do that is because if you select an opponent that just has a couple of cards left in their hand, odds are that those are not just generically good creature cards that they can turn face up as manifested creatures. Because if you're casting a 9-drop creature, it's probably a little bit later in the game. Odds are that if they're just down to a couple of cards left, probably those are going to be more situational or reactive cards rather than just let me get this thing down as soon as possible value pieces. So if you choose an opponent who just has a couple of cards in hand, you're probably going to force them to manifest some kind of like instant speed interaction and maybe some, I don't know, like removal piece like a Reclamation Sage or something like that. It's not going to be something that they're excited to manifest out of their hand. So in some sense, it really does read a lot like Mind Rot. Yeah, they're getting two creatures out of the situation, but if they're manifesting cards that are not actually creatures themselves, they're essentially just discarding them. They no longer have access to the abilities on the cards. And even if they are creatures, you still have to pay the full mana cost to turn them up, and you're not getting any cast triggers, you're not getting any enter the battlefield triggers. So it's kind of a pretty severe hindrance to target an opponent with just a couple cards in hand with this. And then when you're targeting yourself, on the other hand, hopefully you have strategized this in a way where you have maybe 1 or 2 creatures that you're actually like okay with manifesting. You're never going to be like, not never, but if you're not in a manifest specific deck, you're probably not often going to be too excited to manifest them, but you could at least just play a creature that you can turn up later so it's still effectively in your hand. But the great thing about this is that buff at the bottom. One of the great things about it. So your opponent's getting 2/2/2s. When you manifest your 2/2/2 creatures, they're actually going to be 5/4s. Hence, our fire elemental over here. Not just one fire elemental. You are getting 2 fire elementals when you manifest 2 cards out of your hand with this Kozilek. So it is coming down as a 9/9 beater like this Ancient Brontodon. It is bringing 2 fire elementals with it. Already that's 19 mana worth of value. And I'm not saying that playing these cards for their base mana value is a good use of your mana, but just entertaining the idea that you're getting 2 fire elementals and an Ancient Brontodon. You're mind rotting an opponent. You're almost faithless looting yourself because you are having to sort of sacrifice 2 cards from your hand if you target yourself. But again, you can sort of mitigate that downside by putting creatures down onto the table, and then you're drawing 2 cards. So it's almost like a reverse faithless looting. You have to discard the cards first and then draw the cards. But you're getting a pseudo faithless looting ability where you're putting 2 cards from your hand away and then drawing 2 new cards. And then for when your opponent manifests their 2 cards, you're just going to get to draw 2 cards off of that. So you're really casting a divination. So with this 1 9-mana creature, you're getting 2 fire elementals, Ancient Brontodon, faithless looting, mind rot, and divination, which is just a whole heck of a lot of value for 1 card. And I know that 9 mana is a lot. I'm not saying that every deck should just slot this in, although every deck could because it's colorless, which is neat. I'm not saying that every deck should. If you're not a dedicated ramp strategy, or if that's not at least peripheral to your game plan, I would not recommend including this. But if your deck is ramping kind of at all, beyond Sol Ring and Arcane Signet, I don't think it's that hard to get to 9 mana in a late game situation. If you have a decent ramp package in your deck and you're trying to ramp to get into big spells, I think that this is a great option for big spells because most of the time it is just going to refill your hand. At the very worst, even if somebody counters it, you get the cast trigger. And so, you know, if you choose yourself to manifest the creatures, they're not going to be buffed anymore if Kozilek gets countered, because you won't have this static ability on the table anymore. But you still end up essentially drawing 4 cards and getting 2/2/2 creatures just when you cast this. Another trick with this card that I sort of alluded to earlier is you don't have to target yourself. You could just target 2 opponents. If you have 2 opponents that are down to just like a couple cards left in their hand, you can have just 2 opponents manifest both of those cards, probably lose out on what they were trying to do with them. And you're not going to lose any cards in this exchange. So instead of a Faithless Looting, you're really getting 2 Divinations, because you're drawing 4 cards, and 2 Mind Rots. And what you're sacrificing is your Fire Elementals over here in that situation. So there's even some flexibility in like what you do with this. But yeah, most of the time, even in a deck that doesn't have other colorless creatures that this is going to buff, just casting it and getting 19 power on the table, along with making an opponent discard, drawing a bunch of cards, that is an overwhelming swing of advantage. And most of the time, opponents aren't going to know what even hit them when this thing comes down. One other thing that I want to talk about with it is, yes, 9 mana is a lot of mana. And also, it is the least amount of mana that you're going to pay fairly without cost reductions for an Eldrazi Titan. All of the other Kozileks are 10 mana. The other Ulamogs are 10 to 11 mana. Emrakul, the new one, has some cost cheating abilities, but it's like 13 to 15 mana. So the difference between 9 and 10 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but really what that boils down to is this can come down a turn earlier. And there are often going to be games where you can get to that 9 mana threshold, but you're not drawing the 10th land. You're not able to find that last piece of ramp, and you can't get to 10 mana. So I play this in my Kozilek the Great Distortion deck, and oftentimes I find, even when I struggle to get to that 10 mana to cast my commander, if I ever have this in my hand, it's so much easier to cast this for 9 instead of casting one of the other Kozileks for 10. So yeah, I think that this is the real deal. I think it comes with just like a complete package of value. You're getting so much out of it. Yes, it's a lot of mana, but I think that you should definitely give it a shot if your deck is doing any kind of ramping at all. A lot of the other like high mana go-to cards are like Archon of Cruelty, or the 7 mana Atraxa, or some of the other Eldrazi Titans. But I would encourage you, Villis, Broker of Blood, the new Volgavoth that I talked about in my Duskmourn video, is slowly becoming one of the big creatures that people sort of go to. The downside of this one is that you can't really reanimate it. You have to cast it in order to get that trigger. So it's not a great reanimation target, but if you think you can get to that 9 mana, or if you have some weird kind of like cost reduction thing that you're doing, definitely give this card a shot. It's just it's so powerful. That's about all that I have for you. This, again, trying to keep it short with this one, but give Kozilek a try. It's it's relatively affordable compared to the other Titans, and it just does so much. I've been impressed every single time that I play it. So, cheers. And if you stuck around this long with me, thank you so much. Go ahead and give the video a like and subscribe if you feel up to it, because that helps the algorithm bless me, and so more people can see these videos. And if you are new to the channel or haven't sort of stuck around to the end, I usually like to do a reading with this Theros-themed magic oracle divination deck that a good friend of mine gifted to me. So before we sign off here, let's do a quick little reading. And I invite you to just Take a deep breath with me. Sometimes it's hard to remember to slow down, especially when we're doom scrolling, doom sliding through the internet here. So take a deep breath. Try and bring yourself into this present moment. I'm recording this video not too long after Thanksgiving in the States, and I had a nice week. Got to spend some quality time with loved ones, which is a great blessing. I hope that you got to spend some time with family or friends or people that you care about. Got to eat some good food, hopefully. And if not, maybe just try and take some time to do something nice for yourself. Okay, enough blabbing. What do we got? So we have, oh, can you see? Let's see. Nature, featuring Nylea. And I believe that Nylea is the Theros goddess of the hunt. So we have this big, somewhat imposing hunter carrying bow and arrows, towering over the surrounding landscape. She is very green. And it looks like, is that a feather wing crown there? So yeah, pretty good way of symbolically invoking nature. And kind of funny that we get the nature card for the Unnatural Abomination episode where we talk about Eldrazi. But maybe this is a reminder that we ground ourselves and that we don't get lost in the blind eternities, and that we appreciate this beautiful earth that we're all here on together for the time being. Maybe that'll be Mars in the future, we'll see. But for right now, very much appreciative for our mom. Is Nylea my mom? No. Gaia, maybe. But yeah, we have Nylea here. So thanks for sticking around, y'all. Hope to catch you in the next one.